Good morning everybody and welcome to Yew Tree Gallery and what I have called in the invitation to this exhibition a surprise exhibition. We had not imagined after the big retrospective called Homage to John Maltby in 2022 that there would be any more work from him available at all. But to our surprise and amazement, we were delighted that when his son and daughter Jo and Philippa started clearing out his workshops and drawers and cupboards and so on, they discovered an enormous number of really wonderful pieces. Some of them what we would call fragments and other complete pieces ranging over the full 6 decades really of his creative life. So the ceramic work and also the painted wood, the automata, and even necklaces he made. This exhibition is a compilation of all those wonderful discoveries, and I hope you're going to enjoy walking around with me. This little table we have here of memorabilia really of John gives an interesting insight into the way he worked. One very precious sketchbook here is from 1958 when he was at Leicester College of Art studying sculpture, and it's quite interesting to see the nature of his drawing at that time. A lot of wind-blown figures which continued throughout his working life, conveying the sense of wind, and I think that was probably because he was born on the coast of Lincolnshire and constantly the wind was blowing him sideways basically. But this dates from 1958 and we've got a sketchbook here of 1985 where he was experimenting with enamels, and we've got some of those pieces here in the exhibition too, which is great. And this little one here is very sculptural, dramatic figures and posts or rocks or trees, lovely outline sketches of ideas that he had. And each of these, the two last sketchbooks are full of glaze recipes and ideas for different colours and things. He was very technically interested and in the results of the way he worked and what he used. And that's a rather lovely early photograph of John making wooden boats, some of which are in the next room, gallery room, where we've got all the wooden work. This little collection down here is among some of the earliest work of John's that we have. He was apprenticed to David Leach at Bobby Tracy in the 60s and moved with his wife Heather to a little village called Stoneshill near Crediton in Devon, and up there they set up their own pottery called Stoneshill Pottery, and he continued making pots, vessels, thrown vessels to start with, and often used the familiar Temoku glaze, that dark rich brown glaze that was very much a Leach glaze, and as you see in the selection of pots down here, and started experimenting with enamels too. And this little bowl in particular, it's got a really quite unfamiliar yellow, which you didn't see him use very often, but it's so attractive. That appears in one of the other enamel pieces too, which he started experimenting with after a lot of research into an early Japanese potter who developed enamels for decorating ceramics, which is rather interesting. In this deep bowl, which is the rich Temoku glaze outside and matte inside, John's started using what became very much a familiar motif in his work, which is the white cross and dots. There are a few more early pieces over here on the windowsill, and in my hand I've got two unomis, Japanese tea bowl, very much in the tradition of Leach pottery again. That one in particular, the motif looks really very, very Eastern, very Oriental, and this very attractive enamel blue flowers. We've got 3 of them, that's all there were left. I'd never even seen them before, so delighted to have them in the collection. A great find was this beautiful enamel pillbox Again, slightly Japanesey sort of feel to the decoration. So finely thrown and really very much a collector's item. I noticed recently when we were in York Museum and Art Gallery, among Bill Ismay's magnificent collection of ceramics, there was one of these by John. This beautiful little enamelled square dish, footed dish, is where he really was starting to use enamels pretty constantly. This sort of grid design was another distinctive way in which he did decorate some of his pots. I think probably influenced a bit by the fact that he loved crosswords, and there are several crosswords actually in the sketchbooks as well when he was doing a bit of doodling. Tiny little bowl, but exquisitely painted with the black bird, which appeared again and again and again, both in his enamelled work and also in the figurative sculpture that he moved on to in the late 90s. Behind me on the chest are a few examples of John's hand-built slabware pots, which he was making in the 80s and early 90s, which really marked him out as a potter of exceptional talent. You can certainly see the influence of his sculpture training in the construction of these. He was really in his heyday and had exhibitions all over the world and many in this country, and really very highly esteemed galleries, and his work was starting to be very well collected indeed. I think his sense of humour comes through in quite a few of these pieces, because you also see it in the photographs taken by the photographer Nigel Dutch of a stylised jug there and a sort of very stylised cup or mug over here. And this piece here, which has got the flowers in, the little handle, it's a sort of slightly mocking in a way, because pottery was meant to be useful, was meant to be used. It was the utensils. This was the accepted knowledge about pots, and he's really sort of cocked a snook at that and made these very stylised cup-like shapes, but totally obviously not usable in any way as cup. And the spade vase over here, an exquisitely simple, classical shape, slightly reminiscent of Hans Koper perhaps, but just a beautiful sculptural piece really, with his white cross, which again, as I mentioned before, is a symbol that he frequently used on his work. This very unusual, extraordinary mixed media painting, impasto work, is an element of John's work that I'd never ever seen before, and I don't know whether his son and daughter had either. It was found sort of nestled behind various art materials and things in one of the workshops, and the frame is one of John's frames, which fits it perfectly, but it wasn't actually framed when we got it. And if you look closely into the image, it gives the appearance of a man staring through, sort of through the veil as it were, and I've called it Memento Mori because it seemed fitting, and actually there weren't titles on most of the things that we found anyway, so I've rather enjoyed that. But I thought, you know, you might enjoy seeing how very different it is from other work that John has done and where his mind was leading him. These figures, there are actually 4 of them altogether, which I've called the Elders. They were just standing figures, which would have been part of one of his big sort of compositions of sculptures. And these little clay bases were also made by him, but I was very fortunate to have a friend, an artist craftsman, who was able to put some of these things together and be able to present them in a much more finished way, using all John's materials, but just a bit of extra input from us. One thing that John made quite a lot were caskets. They looked a bit like tombs sometimes, tombstones I mean, But this is a mermaid and a man in bed. It's absolutely delightful. We also have in this exhibition several little small boxes of with cats' heads or owls' heads. On the windowsill behind me there are several smaller pieces which I'll talk about in a moment, but as a centrepiece is this really rare clock. Again, I'd never ever seen any clocks of John's before. Angel topping it, and it still works. I don't know quite when he did it actually, when he made it, but fairly early on I would have thought. A really interesting piece and quite a find. Now, angels were very much among his images that he loved to use, and that people have always loved his angels. This tiny little blessing angel came without a base, and so Neil Robson, who I spoke about earlier, he made this base for it, and just to present it properly. The other pieces around here are birds and little owl on a low wall. So quite a few small pieces here which are really delightful and also show his humour still. Another image that John used frequently in all his work, both the earlier work and the figurative, was the strong-beaked black corvid. Often sort of the beak quite larger than life, but usually with a sort of benign expression, not threatening really. And behind us here is a selection of different corvids. This one I think is quite an early one, which is a very gentle one indeed, with earrings from the wings. This is quite an unusual piece here. This beautiful sgraffito outline of a village. I think it was Blytheborough Church in Norfolk. It's in a marshy spot, and he used that image quite often on his work. And that's quite unusual because of the green. Behind me on the wall are the beautiful linocut prints of MELVYN EVANS. He does a lot of experimenting with different techniques rather than just the traditional, using just the traditional linocutting tools, and he gets the most amazing effects in his work. Then he's moved from more figurative through to more abstract work in the last few years, and he has always admired John Maltby's work and has felt inspired by it, and some of the idioms, some of the feeling within his work and John's are very, very similar, although each obviously has a totally individual identity. All the while that John was working in clay, he also, in one of his 4 workshops, was creating wooden automata and just sort of painted wood boats very often, and some of these we're lucky enough to have found in this gallery room. They're displayed here on the wall. So behind me here is Victoria, a swinging boat, which always very popular in his lifetime. And a very unusual piece here, which I think he probably must have made for somebody for a special occasion. It's a butterfly in a flower, and with a little tag saying congratulations. That's a very unusual piece. This is called the Suitor, a quite small man and a rather large lady, both of them with amazing hairdos, being presented with a bouquet of flowers. These are very unusual figures to have found. In the early years, probably late 70s, I would have thought, maybe 70s, John was very impressed by the work of Sam Smith, the American toy maker and model maker, and he adopted a similar vein in a way, but very much again his own interpretation of amusing figures, painted clay. They're painted clay. He used coarse string to create the hair. This one, when it was found, didn't have any hair on at all, but it had the little hooks ready to receive the hair. So that's something that we added ourselves so that they make a pair. I call them the sirens. And Philippa actually found a photograph of John. Well, this is you know, probably quite early actually. He's got very dark hair here, and lots of it too. So he's actually working on some of these models and constructions. Not actually found in his workshop, but I was asked to sell this on behalf of a collector. And the mechanism here is just a pull-push rod. Make the boats rock up and down in stormy seas. This little piece here, actually, all that we found in a jumble of things in a box was the man and the bouquet itself. And I thought, oh, such a shame not to be able to somehow present this. And so Neil made this base and background so that it actually, we can make it work, make it stand up. So we did add quite a bit to that piece actually. I don't quite know what John intended to do with these two little paintings, which show beautifully his sense of graphic design and his surety of line. Daisy sailing into St Ives Bay, and the other one is Harbour View. They may have been a background to some automata, I don't know, but they're completely finished in their own right. So we felt they were very much worthy of putting up on the wall in this exhibition. On these white shelves here behind me is the collection of Nigel Lambert's pottery. Nigel is also a great admirer of John's work, and he was telling me when he brought these pots for this exhibition the other day that when he was a student here in Cornwall, an impoverished student of course, he saved up his pocket money to buy one of John's early dishes that he still has and loves. Nigel's brushwork decoration is wonderfully lively, very painterly, and the altered shapes of mugs, bowls, etc. that he uses just make his work very distinctive indeed and individual. His range is enormous. I mean, this for instance is a little serving dish. Behind me we've got a very new idea. Instead of the round plates, he's now making square, wonderful roomy latte coffee cups and square dinner plates, but he also makes round dinner plates. His decoration is just so eye-catching, and each one is of course individually done, so no two are exactly the same. There are big square lasagna dishes, probably a salmon platter, pasta dishes which are lovely to use, big salad bowls or fruit bowls as well, which are quite dramatic in their decoration. And this little display in the window here is the work of Shirley Vauvelle, who lives and works up in Yorkshire, on the coast of Yorkshire. And she hand builds small sculptures and assemblages, often incorporating found objects as well. Her work really reflects on the ever-changing face of nature and the strength and fragility of our planet and its creatures. She originally studied textile design and is self-taught in ceramics, but her interpretation, sort of semi-abstract interpretation, is really fascinating, and we included her work in this exhibition because she too has great affinity with John Maltby's work and has found him a great mentor. This cabinet shows quite an assortment of things really. Some beautiful small figures, well, just heads really, but very sculptural by John. This is a rather amusing piece. Again, like the sirens over there, painted clay, and his wife Heather was looking for some way in which to display the earrings, Guy Royle's earrings actually, that she loved. And he devised this for her, which is very effective. You can actually hang several pairs of earrings, so that's a piece that's actually for sale in its own right. But it's also displaying earrings that are put together by Lucy Oldland, who lives locally and is my assistant in the gallery, and she has used some of the fragments, the tiny little fragments, which John would have used for earrings himself, to use on the kings and queens. Also necklaces, She's used some silver chain to link various John's beads together. This is a particularly attractive one. So that's just all John's beads, but put together with little silver links. This piece is actually made by John himself. That's really quite a spectacular piece. I don't know whether he may have been influenced by a trip that he and Heather made to Africa, to Kenya, when he was very admiring of the indigenous work there, the craftsmanship of things that were made out of all sorts of bits and pieces, really, by local people. And that visit had great impact on his mind and on some of the designs in his work. So it could have been that these, which I think, to me anyway, they look quite sort of African, might have arisen from that visit. This cabinet contains a glorious array of Guy Royle's silver and gold jewellery. Guy is a very, very talented designer and silversmith and goldsmith. Each time we have new work from him, I'm always amazed at the new designs, the beauty of each piece, really, and the attention to detail. For instance, we have some lovely brooches here in which he uses 18 carat yellow gold and white gold and red gold. One of Guy's latest necklaces is this very restrained and simple looking but beautifully made gold and nephrite jade necklace. It just looks stunning on. Gold is unfortunately incredibly expensive at the moment, and so he isn't often able to buy it and use it, but we're jolly lucky to have this piece. This is another stunning necklace that just come in, yellow agate beads with these fascinating shapes in silver, all hand carved in silver. I do hope you've all enjoyed the tour of this treasures exhibition and will be able to come down and visit it if at all possible. It's open until 15th of June and from Tuesday to Saturday every week, 10:30 to 5 o'clock. So hopefully that gives enough scope. Otherwise, obviously, you can have a look on the website, but there is only a selection on that, as there are over 100 exhibits of John's work and the other work as well. So it is only a selection. As well as the work inside the gallery here, we do have sculpture in the gardens by Helen Nock and Rhys Ingram. Helen's work is mainly based in slate, tables, stools, bird baths, and some bird sculptures as well. And Rhys he's a stone carver mainly, also works in wood, but we have two lovely stone sculptures in the garden by him as well. And before you go, let me remind you about the book John Maltby, A Life of Creativity, which was first produced in May 2022 and has now got to its second edition, just published again, with additional pages. It's quite comprehensive and it covers 6 decades of John's working life. It's available through Yew Tree Gallery and through our website as well at £28. Finally, we do usually support a charity through sales and contributions in the exhibitions, and this one we're supporting the Cornish-based charity Shelter Box, who do so much work to provide shelter for displaced people around the world, and do an enormous lot of good. So that's the charity we're supporting this time. Thank you very much.